Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to do Google reviews. Um, Google like to change the way that their API works, so this will probably only work for about 6 months, but it's working at the moment, and it'll just give you a basic idea of how someone might get live reviews off a Google business. Bear in mind you can only get 5 at a time. If you want more than that, you'll need a professional Google API license. One thing to note before I begin, please do read the terms and conditions of the Google API. You can get charged if you use it too much, so just make sure that you're comfortable with that. I personally haven't been charged. I've been using it for about 6 months and I've still got £240 of credit left. Okay, so this is what the Google GET request looks like. See, it's to maps.googleapis.com. I'll put this in the description so you can just copy this across. Obviously, it changes all the time, so 6 months probably won't be relevant, but for now it will work. So you've got it here, put in the place's ID. You should be able to get that using the address of the business. Then you have the fields here, so the name, the rating, formatted phone number, and reviews. And what this will do, so and you've also at the end you've got the key there. So you put this into a GET request, and Google will return to you a sort of JSON response of all the reviews for that business. So I'm just going to quickly show you what that looks like. This is a GET request I did of the example that they listed in the Google Docs, actually, of a Google Workplace. And sorry, you don't get all the reviews; you only get 5, as I said in the beginning. But for most people, that's enough, really, enough for maybe the homepage of a website. If you want more, obviously, you can set up the professional API. Yeah, so you see it's in this JSON format here. So what we're going to do is create a JavaScript file to handle this and then blurt it out on our homepage. So let's begin doing that. So I've just set up a sort of 3 basic files here. I've got index.html, main.js, and request.php. In my index.html file, I've got a link here to the slick.js CSS that we're going to be using for the reviews, just to put them on a carousel so they slide across. I mean, I'm not going to style this too much. It's just going to be a basic showing you how to do it. I'm not great at styling things, so you guys will do much better than me. I've also got jQuery here. I've got the slick min.js file, and I've got here the source to my main.js file. Within our main HTML document, we're going to need an element that's going to be replaced by the JavaScript with the reviews that we pull from the Google API. We're going to be using PHP to make a request to Google to get those reviews. Then we're going to pass that to our JavaScript file, which is then going to insert it into our index.html page. So I'm going to start off with just creating a section here. So we do section, and I'm going to give this section an ID of server response. And I'm going to give it a class as well. Class of just review section. Great stuff here, camel casing on that. Fantastic. Okay, I'll do now is just put in some basic styling here as well while I'm at it. So I'm not going to create another style sheet. I'm just going to do it in the index.html. So just get rid of the margin and padding. Okay, and the review section, I'm just going to give it a position relative. Height auto. I just realized it would probably help you guys if we actually had some HTML that we could style here, because we're creating this dynamically. Obviously it's not there. So what I've done is I've just grabbed what the HTML is going to look like after it's created by our JavaScript file, and I've got that here. So we're going to have a div with a class of outer content. Within that div, we're going to have another div with a class of indie review. Here we've got the div to hold the stars for the review. We've got a p tag with the description, h1 with the name of the person who left the review, and h2 with how long ago that was. And Google returns this in a sort of qualitative way of saying it was 4 weeks ago, it was this week, which is quite handy. And obviously that comes through as a string. The stars from the Google API, this actually comes through as a number. So on the back end, I've got to convert that into HTML character codes, which you see here. The reason that we've got two divs here, so an outer content div and an inner content with the actual review, is because the slick slider I'm using, whenever you put something into that, it wants to make it full width of whatever parent container element it has. So that's why I've created that outer content, outer container, and then I'll be able to position the individual review inside that. So let's do some styling on that and see what it looks like. I just realized I haven't actually shown you what this is going to look like. I hate videos that don't show you what you're going to build at the end of it because it's kind of pointless. So here we go. This is what we're going to build. Just a very basic. These reviews have been pulled from the Google place for that Google Office. And yeah, as you can see, it's not styled particularly well. I'm not great at styling. If I was doing this properly, I'd try to have all of them the same height, and then maybe if they were more descriptive in the review, then you'd be able to click to expand it, I guess. But for just showing you guys how to do this will suffice. Yeah. All right, so we've got our bog standard boring HTML here. You see completely unstyled, nothing going on. Let's change that. So first of all, I'm going to do indie review. Give it margin 70 pixels auto, padding of 20 pixels. Nope, not pad L, padding. Let's give it a font family, why not? Montserrat. Where's Montserrat? Let's do indie review. And that's a class. And I'll give it a margin 70 pixels auto, padding 20 pixels. Let's give it a font family. Cool. I'm going to give it a width of 60 view width. I'm not sure if this is the best thing to do CSS wise, if you should use view width to state the size of an element, but that's just what I'm doing in this case. But by all means, if there's a better way to go about doing it, please do. Height, make it auto. Give it a border radius of 20 pixels. And a nice box shadow, which I'm just going to copy this across here. I can't be bothered. Right, and that is looking beautiful. Let me just switch my screen over. Look at that. Oh, beautiful styling there. Great. Next, gonna style the text. So dot indie review p tag font size to view width. See, I find this handy because you can use view width to do the size of fonts, so they have a sort of dynamic quality to them. They're slightly dynamic. I mean, you do have to use media queries to change it in more if you're using like a mobile device and stuff like that. But just for resizing the window a little bit, I find view width on the font size works really well. Margin bottom, I'm going to do 10 pixels. Cool. Let's see. Whoa. I'll show you guys that in a second. .ng review h1, and also let's do our h2 in here. Font size, we probably want this to be slightly smaller than our p text, just to say who left the review. 1.5 view width should do the job. And finally, let's style the stars. So I'm going to give them a color, make it a nice sort of orangey type color. F2B01E. Yep, that's good. And in order to change the size of a HTML character code, you just use font size, funnily enough. So let's make that 30 pixels, and I'm going to set it as important because some of the other styling I've got here is going to overwrite that otherwise. So I want the font size of the stars to be bigger. Great. So if I just switch my screen over now, so you can have a look at that. See, we got our stars. They've been colored in sort of orangey color. Our P tag text is larger. The H1 and the H2 are slightly smaller. And that's pretty much all the styling I'm going to do for this. Before we go any further, let's just see if our slick slider is working. I'm just going to duplicate this review a couple of times so we've got a bit of content to work with. Let's do that. Yep, they've come through. Okay, in order to initiate slick slider, you've got to add in a bit of JavaScript. If I just go over to my main.js file here, and we're going to do jQuery. So $, open brackets, let's do review section, the class we put in earlier to the main div, dot slick. Yep, wrong one. Yeah, so you just copy these. Infinite equal to true. You know what? I'm just going to copy this across. Much simpler, so you guys aren't going to wait watching me do this. So, this is the bit of JavaScript that we use to initiate the slick slider. We're not actually going to call it in this way as it's on its own. Instead, we're going to call it within another function. Just to show you what that looks like, it auto slides every 2 seconds. And you can pull it across like that. Yeah, so it's a pretty good slider. I've used quite a few sliding solutions in my time, but I think this one is probably the easiest one I found. So yeah, I definitely recommend Slick. Now that we've worked out that the Slick slider is functioning, and it's all styled okay, we can now get rid of the HTML here because this is going to be created dynamically when we call it from Google. So that actually doesn't need to be in the document there. So now we will move on to, what should we do? Should we do the PHP or the JavaScript? Let's do the JavaScript. Okay. So I'm just going to copy across the code that I've written here rather than having you guys sit here and me type it out. It'll just be quicker for me to show you. This is the request that we're going to make. So it's on load function. First of all, we're going to grab the element server response in our HTML here. Then we're going to create a constant myString, which is a JSON passed of the response text we get from this call. We're then going to create an empty string here, which is going to hold our final review string once it's all been pulled together. Here is just a simple for loop. So in the length of my string, we're then going to run another function called format review, which I'll show you in a second. That's going to take the text that we've grabbed from our PHP file and just format it in the HTML markup that I've shown you previously. And then once we've done that, you're going to add that single review to the overall review string here. So final review string plus equals current item. That'll then append each one to that list or string. And finally, once we've done that, we're going to be calling the slick slider to, so we're going to be changing the inner HTML of the server response element, and then we're going to be initiating the slick slider to turn that all into something which looks more appealing. And on the bottom here, this is calling our PHP file, which in turn is then going to make the request to Google to get the actual data that we're going to format. So what does this format review function look like? Well, it's just a simple function up here. It's very basically stringing together the different variables we're getting from this response text into that HTML markup. And within this, we're also running another function called stars, which, as I mentioned previously, is going to convert that number, the numerical number of the review, so 4 stars, 5 stars, is going to convert that into 5 character codes, HTML of the star value. This is a really tedious and basic way of doing things. I think if you were much smarter about this, you'd probably be using something like React to create dynamic elements like that. But for this simple example, that this is going to function okay. Yes, so within the format review, it's also calling the stars function, which I've just written down here. And what this is going to do is, oh no, this is the old one. We can get rid of that. Don't know why that's still in there. That's when I got Stack Overflow really good. This is just going to take the number that comes through from the Google review, so like a 5 or a 4, and it's going to say, okay, first of all, x equals 0, create an empty my string, while x is less than that number that's come through from the Google review, say it's 4, you're going to append to my string the character code for the star. And then you're going to do x plus equals 1. So it's going to increment up 1 again. So it's going to do 1, 2, 3. When it gets to 4, it's going to stop. And then it's going to return that string, which is just going to be 4 of those character codes going across. And then that is going to be blurted out up here in our stars div. It's going to blurt out the 5 character codes in a row. Here I've got review.text. In order to access the different parts of this review that we've called here, you've got to do the dot notation. So review.text is going to give you the description of the review. Review.authorname is going to give you the author. Review.relative time description, which is really great, is going to give you a relative time when the review was written. So if it was written this week or it was written a month ago, that's much more useful than saying it was written however many hours ago. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We can get rid of this slick slider bit now, because that is being called within our onload function for the XHR request. So once we finish that, it's going to then initiate the slick slider. That's pretty much it for the JavaScript. Now all we need to do is build that PHP file that's going to make the request to Google to get the response back. So, we're calling it here reviews.php. Actually, I've named this request.php. So I've just got to, let's change that real quick. Yeah, request.php. Cool. So let's have a look to see what that looks like. Fantastic. So now let's look at this PHP file. So when a post is made to the PHP file, it's going to detect that, and we're going to declare a URL here, which is our GET request to the Google API. Then we're going to initiate the curl request. We're going to set the destination of that request to our URL here. Going to curl set option, curl option return transfer 1. What this does is it returns the actual response from that GET request. So if you didn't have that, it will just return true or false depending on if the request was successful or if it was not successful. So we need to set that. Then we execute the curl request, and I'm just going to quickly show you what we get back. So if okay. Right, so this is the raw response from Google, which is just a JSON of, I guess, arrays here. So we have HTML attributions, we've got the result, which contains some detail about the company, the telephone number, the name, the rating, and then within that you've got another subdivision of reviews. So what we want to do within our PHP file is then just reformat this slightly. So this there is just my print statement so that we can view what comes back. Now let's have a look at, so if we take that result and we JSON decode it, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to turn it into an array here. So rather than being JSON response, it's going to be a PHP array. But this still isn't exactly how we want it because we've got HTML attributions here. The result, it's still not that easily accessible. So we just want to format that a bit more. So if I show you, we're going to take that that result of JSON decoding the response from Google, and we're then just going to create a new array. So let's have a look to see what that looks like. Over here. And you can see this is just a bit more tidy. So we've got an array here, and at array index 0, we've got all the details of just the review. So, who the author was, what rating they gave it, the description, etc. So we've lost the detail that we don't need, for example, of the business telephone number, that sort of thing. So this is all a bit more friendly when it's going into our JavaScript file. Great stuff. So the final bit of this is then the JSON is going to echo out the JSON encoded response of that reviews which we created here. So yeah, it's not ideal. It's JSON decoding and then JSON encoding. I guess that's just the way. I got this off Stack Overflow, by the way. This isn't my script. I'm just trying to explain the best I can how it works to you guys. And finally, I think we're done. So pretty simple. Index.html file, which is going to have an element here, server response. That's going to be replaced by our JavaScript, which is going to call from the PHP file, which in turn is going to make a request to Google to get the review. It's going to come back into the PHP file. We're going to do a little bit of formatting. We're going to send it back to the JavaScript file. And inside the JavaScript file, we're going to do a little bit of just putting that into the right HTML markup. And then we're going to replace the element on our, finally, back on our index.html page. So let's have a look at this beautiful thing in creation. And here it is. Look at that. Beautiful. And I can slide across. Great place to visit. Great cafeteria. Also has a good toilet. That's a fantastic review there of a Google workplace. Yeah. Oh, that's a pretty terrible review. Oh dear. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah. So that's pretty much it, guys. A simple way to get 5 Google reviews. These are live, so as individuals leave new reviews on the Google business, those will come through as well. You can only get 5 at a time because of the limitations of the Google API. But I just thought this was a really, really nice, simple way of doing it, and I struggled for quite a while actually, trying to find a simple way of just getting Google reviews from from a place ID, and I couldn't find a simple solution. But just a little bit of searching, actually a lot of searching. It took me a fair few days, and I came up with this. So I hope it's useful to some people, and yeah, I hope you take it and make something much better styled. I'm going to put all this code up on my GitHub, which I don't actually have a GitHub, so I'm going to make a GitHub now just to put this up. Please feel free to make edits of that, to change, improve my code. I'm not the best coder in the world. I'm still learning, but I just thought I'd make this video today as way of really thanking everybody else who makes videos online, and I've been able to learn so much off YouTube, of Stack Overflow, and people sharing knowledge. It's such an amazing thing. So thank you very much. Yeah, and if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, I would really be appreciative. But thank you very much, guys, and take care.